Thank you so much for taking the time to even set out time to have this interview. I'm very excited for the conversation we're about to have. Super
Yeah, I'm a
awesome
little
stuff.
nervous though. I've never been interviewed by a YouTuber before. I was really flattered to get your invitation, and it was really nice of you to reach out to me.
Really?
But I was kind of like surprised, I was, whoa,
I
someone read my article?
I actually think I was the one who was surprised because I was reading the article and then you know how usually when I tend to read when I'm researching, I tend to read a lot of stuff, and mostly when I don't understand a topic or when I find something that's really interesting, I try to reach out through the original creator or the writer in this case. So it was a long shot because especially I'm not that big of a channel, so a lot of the times many people are not gonna be up for an interview. They're it's kind of the question of what's in it for me kind of thing. So like I was really flattered to hear you to see the response and you even setting time on such short notice. Actually, it was really grateful. Yeah,
Yeah, it was a bit short notice, but I
yeah.
was just very flattered to be asked because no one reads any of my blog posts as far as I'm aware.
Mm,
And I'm an academic, so I'm used to working and writing things for free, basically. Like most of academic books and stuff, you don't make any money out of it.
yeah.
So yeah, I was really glad to talk to you, and your channel's big enough to intimidate me, so uh and a lot of your stuff is about scams, right? I had a look at your content, some really interesting videos.
Yeah.
I read It's interesting you're talking about scams because just the other day I got an email from this researcher at Nvidia, and I was like, wow, a YouTuber contacts me and then Nvidia? Whoa, I'm getting big. And then the Nvidia person was like, yes, we read your book about augmented communication and we thought it could be used as one of our AI models. It was all to do with AI again. And I was like, wow. And so I replied to them, and then they replied back quickly. And then I started to realize, oh, this isn't real. This is an AI. I'm being fished. And it was a total scam, but they knew who I was and they directed it and they floated my ego first so that they kind of got through that first layer of firewall. It was really scary. So yeah, but I'm glad that you're not a scam. This is definitely real. So I was at least one of them was a real thing.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned my videos on scams. More recently, I did a video about honey a few months ago, which kind of launched me into the whole niche or the whole topics of product scams and such. And I've done a couple of videos on AI before. It's always been a very interesting topic to look into, and especially with the recent Sora developments and videos that flood social media. It was something that I really wanted to take a look at again because I know there is a lot of developments. It's a very much changing field each and every day. I wanted to try to do something different because I've seen a lot of videos on Sora and on AI, but I wanted to try to bring back the human aspect of focus on the creativity side because a lot of them talking about the AI bubble, they're talking about climate change, they're talking about these many things that AI causes. And sure, I still do talk about those, but I wanted the creative front to be the major driver, which is what led me to your work. And I actually read the other one where you were talking about how you were joining on I think it was an online conference. I was reading through let me look at the name. I have the sources right here. And I was looking at it and was really interesting because it also led me into this entire rabbit hole of because your article was the first one that I read, and it led me down into this rabbit hole of AI AI slop versus creativity and very many conflicting views. It was such an interesting and fascinating world to get into. Very fun. It actually just shifted the whole narrative and the whole scope of the video. This video was actually supposed to come out last week, but because of these new things that I found, this new rabbit hole was like, okay, I have to share this. I have to learn more about this, and show this other side that I'm not seeing being documented about a lot. And yeah, which is what has led us here. And you actually saying that you don't want it to be a super serious conversation is was something that I was really I wanted to ask you about that as well. So it was really
I mean, dude, it sounds like I should be the one interviewing you. It sounds like you know a lot more about this whole thing than me. But yeah, I do have strong opinions about AI and creativity because of like my background and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot of research. And what was the conference of mine that you said you found?
let me open it up. It was this from
Because
this
I'm
article.
doing a few research things with AI, like so I was wondering which one it was.
The paper, the article is AI and Creativity, Reflections on Language, Authorship, and the Future of Art.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that'll be related to I'm working with my former PhD supervisor contacted me and she put together a team and we're doing research into authorship and AI, particularly looking at like academics,
Yeah.
because as you're aware, all fields of writing are now being like, I don't want to use the word spammed, but AI is influencing, and there are loads of academic papers coming out that are just completely written by AI, and they're slop, and they're full of errors, and they're not even factually correct. But also, academics are using AI to help them produce their papers in a better way, or to, like sometimes a lot of around the world, universities employ hundreds of different staff, and they have to write academic articles to publish their research. And of course, 99% of all academic research and scientific research tends to be published in English. But most people who publish in these fields, that English is like their second language or something. So we're looking at whether AI can help people who use English as a second language to author their papers more easily, so and things like that. But we're looking in general at what academics think of using AI. So that's one of the research projects that I'm doing with my former supervisor Emma Ushioda at the University of Warwick. But I'm also interested in like a creator because I'm a creative writer, and I set up with a few friends. We set up this publishing company. So we've had a lot of issues with AI and creativity and AI and art as well. So yeah, it's an interesting topic. It's one that I kind of like. Interested in it from various perspectives, really.
Yeah, yeah. You've mentioned about authorship, and coincidentally, just yesterday, I had another interview where I was interviewing another person from the US, and we were talking about the AI versus the copyright law, because that's a very huge part of the AI conversation. You've obviously seen authors and companies coming out and suing these AI companies because of them having trained these models on their works without any compensation or any licensing or anything, any conversation happening in between. And it was a very interesting conversation because the copyright law does rely a lot on human authorship. And as you might expect with AI, that line gets blurred a little because when we talk when this model gets trained on a wide variety of books or a wide variety of works, it kind of makes something that is a derivative of all those different works and articles that it has been trained on. So that's where the copyright law kind of struggles with, because then how do we attribute this ownership? Who do we give this ownership to? Because sure, you might say that the derivative work is under fair use, but the works under which this AI model was trained on wasn't, right? Like there's something that there's something that gets lost in translation over there, because not all steps of this process to get to this end product, which you might argue is under fair use, was entirely fair. So, which is a very interesting situation that the law and the AI companies and the governments are kind of struggling with to battle. And I also saw that Japan was also among the countries that uh okay, when we take a look at the US is struggling with a lot of lawsuits with these AI companies, basically with them arguing that, hey, this is fair use, and the owner arguing, no, it's not. So you have countries like Japan arguing that allowing training, mining of data for AI models to be all under fair use. You have governments avoiding that whole plethora of issues and just skip into the end and just saying that, okay, sure, we understand that it's not going to be entirely fair, but these companies can now train on these these works, and it's all just going to fall under the blanket of fair use. So it's very tough to navigate, especially with the different jurisdictions and different places that these companies are obtaining this data. So I'm very curious to hear about that project, that research that you mentioned that you were doing about authorship. Maybe you might look into it, whatever you can discuss, because I can understand that some of the information you might not be able to discuss publicly yet. So yeah, I
Oh
realized
yeah,
that.
well, no, we can. We're not like a CIA agency. We're all our research will be made public and it's publicly funded.
Okay.
But we I can't tell you much about it yet because we're still collecting the data, and I've there's a lot of paperwork involved in the
Yeah.
Japan side of things, so we haven't started collecting data in Japan yet. But yeah, we're not really looking at the copyright issues. We're just looking at how authors use AI, especially
Mm,
academic writers to sort of get their papers out. Or, I mean, there was actually a paper that was published in an academic journal back in 2023 or 2024, and they cited ChatGPT as one of the co-authors. So that, which to me is crazy because ChatGPT obviously isn't an author, it's not an entity. And this is one of the things in the article I wrote about, like, ChatGPT is mainly written in the code language of Python.
Python, yeah.
And I think, like a Python, it can wrap itself around you and it can strangle the life out of you if you're not careful. If you rely on it too much, you won't have any of your own ability to breathe anymore. Or you can use it to sort of empower yourself. And if you know how to use it, you can actually use it to speed up your productivity, or you can, if you, but then you have to give it a lot of yourself over. So obviously, every time you type into ChatGPT or one of these other AIs, unless you've unticked certain boxes which are ticked by default, it's going to train itself on the conversations you have with it. So it's learning from you all the time, which freaks a lot of people out. But I don't mind that so much really because I guess I'm old enough to realize that that's not new actually. That's not just a ChatGPT thing. When I got my first phone, and it was like one of those switchy Nokia things, I was really impressed with the predictive text that was new when I first got phones, right? That was at early AI. And LLMs are obviously, large language models are obviously like just a much more sophisticated, advanced version of the predictive text that's in your phone. And how did they get this advanced? How did they get so good now? Well, basically, they've been training on your data for years and years as you type into your phone and predict text and then correct it. That's been sent back to these companies. So they're trained on decades of data. It's not as new as people think. And when you say AI, everyone thinks ChatGPT stealing people's artwork and stuff. But actually, AI is being used right now to cut out my green screen and replace it with my digital background. And it's been used to sort of make me look a little less horrible thanks to the filters in Zoom. I mean, that's an AI thing as well, but we don't really think of that as AI. So I'm not really opposed to AI because it's been around for ages. What I am opposed to though is like I don't like AI slop, but I don't like the fact that everything made by AI would be branded as slop. I think you can make things with AI that are not just inherently slop, but you have to edit them yourself as a human and you have to like you work on them. You can't just press a button and out comes brilliance. Like how much have you used AI, Linny? Do you use it much?
In my creative side, in school, yes, I do use it to its to learn complex topics, especially when we have. I use it for school for learning. That's basically the boiled down version. But for the creative side, I don't. I used to use it, but I don't anymore much. Yeah, I don't.
What
Yeah.
turned you off against it? What made you like? Because I noticed you make music as well, right? So I'm sure one of your future videos will be about Suno AI and that whole like that. What was the other AI music company that got taken down or sued? What was that one?
I don't. I only know
But
about Suno, but I haven't been in touch with the music AI side. But I do. I have seen a couple. Haven't tried them myself,
yeah,
but I've seen a couple.
I mean,
Yeah.
as a musician, probably Suno is the one that you particularly hate, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you asked a question on. Did you? Was the question about when? What made me stop using AI, or what was the?
Yeah, why did you stop using AI for when so you used to use it for creativity, but then you kind of
Yeah.
you got turned off against it?
Um. I think it was all of that happened this year. Uh, I was using it mostly for brainstorming, which I do kind of still use it for, but not so much. I try to exercise because I found out that I was ending up. You used the analogy of the Python and how we kind of construct, and I noticed that I was starting to be a little bit over reliant on it for brainstorming, where like you
Mm.
kind of start to realize that my input isn't really as much as I would want it to be. I'm not learning from it. It's learning from me, which is not what I intended to happen in the first place. So that's why I kind of pushed back a little so that before can uh, I pushed back a little to kind of start to learn the ropes by myself a little, and then maybe I'll find a way to integrate it seamlessly where it doesn't feel like it's doing most of the work and I'm just sitting and writing that prompt. Yeah.
Oh, good for you, Linny. I think you stopped at the crucial moment before the Python sort of strangles you. And this is I'm my main job. I'm a teacher, and I teach English at a Japanese university. I work for an English literature department, and I teach a writing class. So you said you use AI for school. I mean, have you ever used it to write an assignment?
To write it, writing, no, I've always been very I don't like how the output of AI, the typical not this, that, the
Yeah,
delves, oh, we're going to
yeah.
dive into the fascinating world, like the typical AI stuff. I had tried it in my first year. I'm in my fourth year of university. So like I did kind of try it in 2023 when it was like still new, but now it's more so. I think it's because I'm more conscious of how I want to use it now, but I've tried it before. I've used it before, but now
Mm.
it's because I'm a
I
little bit
think
conscious.
Yeah, I think you made the right choice there. Like as a teacher, I'm getting assignments that I can tell how much AI the student has used, and sometimes it's like, great, they've used AI, I can see that, but I can see that they've also edited it themselves. AI is not able to produce this kind of quality. So in that case, the student has enhanced their output, but you can tell that it's not like just lazy. They haven't cheated. But then there are other essays when it's like clear that they went, write my assignment, here's what I need to write, and it spat out an output, and then they just submit that. And it's awful. It's really empty, but it can be quite tricky to prove, how much AI someone's used. And like I say, for second language, if someone's writing in the second language, like all my students tend to be writing in their second language. Um, it's they're using AI to help them. They're using AI to help translate things and stuff like that. But at what point does that become cheating? It's difficult. And this is the interest in authorship, really. Like when you use an AI to produce something, you start off with a prompt. And so a lot of AI artists who think that they have produced something great, they're proud of themselves because they had a great prompt. And not everyone can come up with a good prompt. And there are some bits of AI that I've seen, like AI videos, that are really weird. and really interesting. And the weird core stuff is
Mm.
quite good, I think. And AI can do that as a strength. And the original spark of the prompt is what's good there. And then they've worked on it a little bit more after that as well, I think. When there are other people who just like hit a button, out spits the picture, and if they think that's how you make art, it, I mean, I'm not one to judge, like different people like different things, but that for me would be more in the slop end. I want to argue the case that if you work on something or if you've used AI to help you make something, it doesn't automatically make it slop. If you've had your own human input with it, or it depends kind of what you're doing really with it.
Yeah, you've mentioned that being in the school setup and having students submit maybe papers or assignments that you can quite fairly tell that some AI was used to write this. I find it very interesting that even looking at it from kind of your perspective too, um, like how much you mentioned this a little as well. How much human input do we use okay, where do we draw the line to from this is cheating by using AI, or I did use AI but I modified it to kind of make it my own? Where is the line, kind of where do we trace that line? It's a very huge uh gray area that you don't really know how to figure out, because this technology has advanced faster than we have been able to adapt to it. So it's a very interesting topic, because I mentioned before about the copyright situation. The person that I was talking to, they mentioned something about derivative works, and people who use AI, who make something using AI, but then have their own additional human input, and then they try to file a copyright for that work, which you could argue was made by AI, but some human input was also worked was also inputted, it was also used to make it as well, used for it as well. So the major question that these legal systems have is the same one that I started with, is where do we draw that line? How much human input is enough to deem something collaborative or something derivative than an AI
Yeah.
slop?
This is a really important question. That's not a question I could even
Yeah.
touch upon. I have no idea about the legal stuff, but I can perhaps share an example of my own. Like, I don't do much with creative work as art. My undergraduate degree was actually fine art, and I have a painting I did up on the wall there.
Mm.
So as you can see, I'm not much of an artist. But I use it more for my writing, and obviously I'm marking students' work and they're using it for their writing. So as a linguist, or an applied linguist I should say, that's kind of my interest. So like a little bit of history. So do you happen to know when the first ever book written by a computer came out?
No, I don't believe I do know.
There's a book called The Policeman's Beard is Half Constructed, which was written by a computer program called Racter, and it came out just 2 years after I was. Well, I came out in 1984, which is pretty long time ago now. And I've always been interested in like computers for creating art. Like I like digital. When I did my fine art degree, I did painting, but I also used digital techniques like Photoshop and photography and stuff. And I was really interested in digital art, but it wasn't AI generated art in those days because we're talking like 20 years ago. But in 2017, I published a book of my first book of poetry, and this was like a kind of messing around with computers. So one thing that I did was I took like famous poems like William Blake's The Tiger, or what else did I? I took some lines from Shakespeare, which by the way are out of copyright. So because they're so old, you're legally allowed to republish these works. Anyway, so I took a poem by William Blake and put it into Google Translate, back in 2017 when Google Translate was still rubbish. And I translated it from English to Arabic and then to Tamil and then to French and then to Thai and then to Japanese and then to Chinese and then back to English. So it was like destroyed. By
Mm,
the time it came back, the poem was very different from its original imp, and that was supposed to be like a funny experiment. And I'm really glad I did that in those days because if you tried to do that now, it wouldn't be that interesting because it would change things, sure, but it would largely keep the meaning
yeah.
because machine translation has got so good recently. So I've always been interested in playing with computers to see what they can do. And with AI, I got this idea that I could, and I don't want to steal anyone's work or anything, but I thought I'll work with authors who are out of copyright. So I thought like I've always been a fan of Shakespeare, but I don't like the fact that Shakespeare's stuff is plays. They always make you read Shakespeare. Why not take you to the theater or let you watch it on film? It's meant to be watched, right? So if they're going to make you read it, it should be a novel. So I thought maybe I can turn Shakespeare into a novel. But then I thought, well, I couldn't write Shakespeare as a novel. Who's great enough to write Shakespeare into a novel? And I thought, well, maybe like other great novelists like Charles Dickens or Emily Bronte or something like that. So I actually did use AI to create a novel version of some of my favorite Shakespeare plays in the style of, for example, Charles Dickens. And I worked really hard on this. Like it would produce something and then I would have to rewrite it or I would edit it myself a lot. And a lot of like, you can't get ChatGPT to write more than 800 words without it
Mm,
completely falling apart. So it for me it felt like playing an instrument, and I was learning to kind of play and stitch things together. And it was really fun. And I actually got in touch with a Dickens scholar at Leeds University to ask her how authentic she
mm,
thought the Charles Dickens voice was. And we had a really interesting conversation about that actually. But it's this question of authenticity, right? Which is what my main area of research is. What's authentic? If ChatGPT makes something, is it real? And if it's not, why not? And if it is, how? Like, and how much of it is you? How much of that original prompt that it took comes from what you can call your output? And this is a question that I can't answer, but it's a really interesting question that I want to kind of investigate. But I feel a lot of ownership over that Shakespeare book because I worked hours and hours on it. But also, I couldn't have done it without AI. The whole point is that, you need an AI, like a LLM is trained on a corpus of material and it can mimic other writers really well, but not perfectly, of course. So this is like that was an experiment that I tried, my poetry that predates AI and then this new Shakespeare project. But I was a little sad because I thought my Shakespeare books would become bestsellers because I
mhm.
thought it was a great idea, but they haven't sold at all.
Um, I'm very curious because you've mentioned of your interest in matters AI and how it can be used and implemented into your own workflows. How did you get to your current stance on AI and it being used as a tool and everything that came from that?
Just from like you, Linny, you said you were using AI and then you realized, oh, hang on, now it's eating me, it's constricting me. I'm not able to think anymore. And then you withdrew from it. So like you, I kind of that's how my stance on AI. I have a very strict rule about using AI for research. Don't use AI for something that you don't already know about. That's the golden rule of AI because it will spit out a load of nonsense where it'll tell you things that aren't important and it'll hallucinate things
Yeah.
as well. So if you know about something and you can call out bullshit when you see it on the AI, then it's okay to use. But it's tempting to use it because AI knows everything about everything. So it's tempting to use it for other things too. And then you've got to go and check it. And how many times have you just relied on AI and thought, I'll check it later, and then not done? And then you find out that it was wrong or it lied to you, or, and so we're all dancing the dance and learning our way and learning the steps as we go. But I think the crucial rule is like not to let it own you or not to let it constrict you, but to let it, work how you want it to work. And that does require you often to throw away what it produces or to get it to really try again or to give it a little bit more context. But all of this is, of course, requiring you to do more and more prompting. And there are even jobs like prompt engineer these days, right?
Yeah.
Which I find really a fascinating idea. But obviously, all of this prompting, it has an environmental impact as well with the power of the compute. AIs are more efficient, but they still use a huge amount of energy, and they're another polluter in the world.
Yeah.
So, this is one reason why I think that anyone who's really seriously using a lot of AI should factor things like that in. And this is where you've got these sustainable development goals that big companies, I think that they're going to be more important than ever now. And, fair trained AI, like AI that didn't steal the work off someone, but actually paid them. I think people will make choices. So OpenAI is well known for having ripped off a load of stuff and stolen a load of copyright material. And they're winning or losing copyright cases depending on the day or the weather. But I think ultimately, like as a consumer, you've got to choose which AI company you use and how and check that you're happy with it ethically. Like, yeah, I agree with this company. These aren't the bad guys. I'll give my money to them. Um, but it's so complex, so it's really difficult. But I feel sorry for any artist who's had their work stolen by an AI and just invested without the payback. That's wrong. That's not right. And then anyone who just presses a button and it spits out slop and they claim that it's great art, I would want to judge that more carefully on its actual merits. But art isn't just about effort. If you look at Marcel Duchamp, he just took a toilet and put it in an art gallery one time, and that's a really famous piece. So it's a complex world these days and art's always had these debates about what is art, what makes this literature, what makes this not literature. And AI just adds another interesting layer to that conversation. But we've been having this conversation for hundreds of years.
I'm very, very, there's a question here that I wrote down. I'm trying to phrase them in a way that doesn't look like, I know you mentioned that you don't know how to answer some of the questions. That's why I'm kind of free flowing and not focusing much on the questions, although I am using them as a guide to guide the conversation. But yeah, okay, I have one here that is quite direct to a paper, the article that you wrote, and you likened the current situation with what happened with photography and traditional artists. So, can you tell us a little bit about what makes you think that these two are very similar situations?
Yeah, okay. You're talking about the bit where I mentioned about Charles Baudelaire.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think that like I was saying, um, art's always had these debates over creativity and authorship. And like I'm a fan of Francis Bacon, and he always said that he never sketched, he never did sketches before he did a play. They went into his studio and found all these drawings and sketches. And that was like an outrage in the art world. But they were definitely his sketches, and he liked to troll people, he was kind of a funny guy like that. But then, um, just like 2 years ago, there was this other case, and someone had said that they'd found a load of Francis Bacon's pastel drawings, and they were putting them on display in this art gallery. And the person responsible got arrested because they found these all to be fraudulent. But this wasn't until after quite a few people had been tricked and bought these paintings at like Francis Bacon level expensive and you know like when you like they sometimes they'll discover a new Rembrandt painting and they have to get a special expert to come in and authenticate the painting and say whether it really is or not a real Rembrandt. You know, it was found in someone's loft. Did Rembrandt really draw this? And you know, a lot of people can produce or replicate exactly in that sort of style. So if it's not by Rembrandt, it's really the question of authenticity for me. Like, you know, people like even going back to Shakespeare, there are people who say Shakespeare didn't write that or the original idea was not Shakespeare's. You know, like for example, the original story of Othello, for instance, is actually not Shakespeare's idea, but he developed it into something new. So is that a like which one is the original one, you know? Which one is the really authentic one and which one should you celebrate? The one that wasn't such a great work of art, but that was the original story, or the one that Shakespeare developed and turned into uh this fantastic play called Othello. And so this is like where we are now with AI. For me, it's a really old debate because it's still the authenticity debate. Is it real or is it not real? And th I think that's you know that's why it's not a new debate and why this whole photography thing is a similar thing because it's a new technology that came along and people said, "Oh no, look, you can't do that. You can't just take a photograph because you just go click and it just perfectly captures someone's portrait." No, no, you need to be trained and you need to be a brilliant artist to be a portrait. You can't just point and click. That's not fair. And people hated photography for that. And look at photography now. It's a well-respected art form. And it's not about just point and click. Like real photographers, they work and they know about the photography. It's like an instrument, you know. Some people can take a good picture and some people they don't know how to because their pictures are kind of just snappy. So that's the difference between AI art and AI slop, I think. But it's just very much in its infancy at this stage. But you know, it's about expertise, it's about knowledge, it's about having a craft. So I do think there are similarities between that original photography idea and AI art, just because it's this new technology coming in.
Yeah. And there was this article that I was reading this morning. It was from an Italian artist, and he was really, really hammering down on the idea that we have a double standard on AI on AI slop. He was the title of the article itself was literally the idea of AI slop is slop, and he used a very interesting. He opened up with a very interesting example. It was a personal example. He said that he was recently he was in I remember which city, but he was going through some shops which had tourist souvenirs, and a lot of the souvenirs are really the generic, the cliche things that you expect. Someone is a tourist, oh, they're gonna want this. And then as he was doing that, something caught his attention. He found something that was really he let me read for you exactly how he says it. Sorry, just a sec. He says that where is it? Okay, let me read it for you. He was in Naples. He was strolling around in multiple souvenir shops. Most of them were filled with things that he'd already seen and a lot of tourist cliches. That was up until he came up across an object so ugly for that same reason ended up being wonderful. It's one of those things that it's so bad that it's actually kind of good. And that is the thing that he ended up buying. He says that in the current age, if someone were to come up to you and tell you that this ugly thing was made by AI, it would have been instantly been labeled as AI slop. And he asked a very important question. Why has the discovery that we can produce junk with machines made us blind to the fact that humanity has never done much better? He says that we have never produced one masterpiece after another. For the most part, we have made mediocre things and we always will. So, coming back to the idea of the photography and the painters, or the photography lowered the barrier of entry because I could have been somebody who isn't able who doesn't have the capability of painting, but I can point a camera and take a very good picture. Yes, it has lowered that barrier, but at the same time it did lead to a lot of bad photographs. But we also have to recognize that even if we go back to the previous era with the painters, not all paintings that had been made were masterpieces. Through the many mediocre paintings is where you get the ones that do stand out. That's where you get the ones that people do remember, because we have placed a very high standard on what AI is supposed to create, that we kind of forget that AI is being trained on whatever does exist, and whatever exists is very many mediocre or many very average things that humans have made. So it's kind of the situation of human slop is good, but AI slop bad. So he was kind of talking about this double standard that we have about here that you kind of talked about, because essentially as a human, I'm looking at this a person who used AI and said that, hey, I it took me an entire month to make that video, and you want to tell me that you wrote a single sentence or a statement and then you have that same product? Hey, that's not fair. So it's a very interesting debate right there, and he was really forward thinking and positive on what AI that we don't give a chance to AI to improve and show us what it can be. We don't give a chance to people who, like you said yourself, you use AI, but then you use it as a tool. You use it to create something better that you probably wouldn't have been able to create all by yourself, but AI is helping you advance that or create or push or tell a certain story. That is the kind of that is the part of the story that get lost in all of this human slop good, AI slop bad narrative. And I was very I just heard you mention about it. You kind of touched on it a little, but it was something interesting that I thought I'd mention. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point. Thank you. Yeah, I want to read that article you mentioned
Yeah, I'll
because
send it.
that's such a good point that there, yeah, just because a human made it doesn't make it like good, and just because an AI made it doesn't mean it's bad. I think the thing that people are threatened by is the fact that AI can make very shiny, very pretty slop very quickly. And I guess like this is the scary thing. Like phishing scams are more convincing. AI generated deep fakes. They're a real concern, and I think this is where the fear of AI comes from. Not so much the fact that it's good and stealing work from. I mean, the copyright issue is that's not good. They shouldn't just steal things. But yeah, like the thing that people are really afraid of is when AI is too good that you can't tell the difference. And but the point you made about humans generating slop, yeah, it's totally true. Like so, because you're a musician, I asked you about how you feel about Suno, and it's really like, did you know that quite a lot of the like top Billboard songs at the moment are produced by AIs, and people are really upset about it, especially musicians. And but I I signed up for a free Suno trial, and just to play with it, because I'm kind of interested, and I got it to make a song, and the song wasn't very good at all, but it sounded just like all the pop music, and I hate most of the chart music. I like indie labels or weird IDM and stuff like that. So I don't like most pop music anyway. But it was really good at mimicking that pop music sound. And I realized that one reason it can mimic that pop music sound so well is because that pop music it tends to be very generic. People don't care. People like it generic. People like it vanilla. People like it smooth. And when things are more challenging, that's where I would start to, draw the line between just pop, popular consumer, pulp fiction or consumer grade, just, enjoy it for a week and then forget it. What's next? The kind of fashion. churn of the conveyor belt of stuff, or the real lasting art that actually like stays with you or that makes a difference to the world, you know? And I think that's a question that isn't really about AI or humans, but it's really about authenticity and what you think is real and what you think has value.
Yeah, and I there is also a huge thing that a lot of these big companies who like Disney just recently signed a deal with OpenAI to allow them to train their
Oh
models
yeah.
on their entire catalog. So you have like these big companies don't have found out a really interesting loophole in the system where people don't really care that much if something is AI or not. Essentially, they might get offended by it, but they don't care. They'll still watch it. And these companies are
Yeah.
in a
They
position
don't
where,
care.
okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to allow these people, are we going to allow ourselves to miss out on the on the massive amounts of money that we can make from this, or are we going to wait until OpenAI illegally sources and takes our characters, which they had already kind of started done, because you could see some references? Are we going to allow these companies to take it themselves and then have to battle them in court and then go nowhere? So that's where you have these massive companies just avoiding that whole litigation problem and just going and just taking the shortcut of signing deals with these companies to allow them to train these models and just make something off of that, provided that they make some level of money from it. Because it was very interesting because I found myself in this position too, where like I've come across AI slop on my feet too, but that's when upon realizing that notion that these companies, that mindset that these companies have of people don't really care, I kind of found out that it's actually true. Because yes, I did see those videos and it did kind of sit, it did feel kind of wrong seeing these weird videos from Sora being generated. But essentially the point is the person who posted that video just wanted me to watch. They don't care how I feel about it. I might get angry and then type in the comments and then that's it. What am I'm not going to do anything. If anything, they're just going to generate another one. They're going to make hundreds of other accounts and then do the same thing over and over again. It's a whack-a-mole game that you're never going to really get rid of all of them. So that's why these companies are just taking that shortcut of and allowing people to allowing these companies to generate to train on their IP. And then you have actors coming out and and coming out and saying that, hey, I'm not actually comfortable with people generating videos of using my likeness. So then OpenAI goes, okay, we hear you. So here's what we're gonna do. We're not going to allow people to generate videos using their likeness. But that's not untraining. That's not undoing the damage that had already been done. That's just imposing a guardrail that,
Yeah.
hey, if a user says X and Y, don't generate that. But there are loopholes around those guardrails that exist. And another huge thing is that you see people generating videos using likenesses of people who are dead or people who lived in the past. There was an issue. They were talking. The person that I was talking to yesterday said that if someone did not leave in writing a notice that, hey, you cannot use my likeness to generate videos, their their likeness is up for grabs. You can generate. That's why people are generating videos using people who weren't there, using videos of I don't know, Tupac, of like all these musicians, artists, actors, so many, Robin Williams. You saw that, like there's so much happening over there. So it's it's very interesting that there's no one size fits all, solution to all of these things. And even in the art world, it's much more harder to navigate because you have artists being having their works being labeled as AI generated just because it looks a certain way when potentially maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, that's true. Like people say, "Hey, you're not a real artist. That's AI generated." That's why that must really suck if you're actually if you're a photorealistic artist
Yeah.
and then someone just says it's AI, but you spend hours and hours making that. That's a real. You're right. Yeah, not everything that people say is AI, and that's a real slanderous thing to throw at an artist to say that it's AI generated if it wasn't. Sorry, I'm going to have to take a sip of water because
It's okay,
it's
it's okay.
quite dry in Japan. I'm not advertising water, by the way, for your listeners. Um, so yeah, going back, so there's a couple of things there, like with the Disney thing was really interesting because I think one of the reasons why OpenAI and Disney cut that deal was because they were both going to destroy each other in court. They were both going to throw loads of money at it, and they probably hashed it out in the boardroom. And some clever guy at Disney and some clever guy at OpenAI said, "Hey, we could both make money because when people who use our Sora AI get hold of your Disney stuff and they can start hanging out with R2D2 and doing lightsaber fights, that's gonna, that's advertising for your brands, like and more, even though it's not the original one, it's like a meme or it's like a replication of those things. It just pushes, it's like product placement, essentially. It's the same thing as when someone's drinking a can of Coke on an episode of a US sitcom. Like they're just it's basically product placement, but at this much more cultural level. Everyone's selfies, everyone's feed is now full of more Disney than it used to be. And that's good for Disney. That's good, and that's great for OpenAI because hey, which company can I use to create a lightsaber fight? So they've both won by not fighting it, by just sort of taking it and running with it. But again, this is already something that the internet was already born from. So, a scholar called Henry Jenkins wrote about participatory culture. So, like YouTube being a great example. So, YouTube's nothing. Okay, it's just a bunch of hosting software.
Yeah.
The thing that makes YouTube are the the content creators like yourself who go on there and make videos. And if you don't get a lot of views, you made the video for free. And of course, YouTube take a big bite out of all the adverts revenue that you make, and you're getting paid like a tiny trickle of what they make out of all your efforts. So they do nothing except line you up with advertisers, and that's how capitalism works, right? So, but participatory culture is all about the fact that at least you can do that now. Like in the old days of TV, if you wanted to be on TV, you had to get with the network, you had to, put up with your Harvey Weinsteins and whatnot, and you had to play the game and you had to be lucky and you had to be successful and you had to be churned out through the Hollywood machine. But if you want to be a successful YouTuber, it's a lot of hard work and quite a lot of luck, but essentially it's just you, and you're the participator in that culture, and anyone can post a comment and anyone can make their own videos. And so that's where Sora AI and Disney's thing is. It's just participatory culture for the AI generation. And then another thing, so about the use of people's likeness, like in Sora AI, you can upload your own face as a cameo and allow other people to use it. And one of the like most famous people on Sora AI is a guy called Fancy Sun, who, as far as I'm aware, is only famous on Sora AI. And he's just a guy who was really good at creating, and he even calls it, he's slop. He's great at generating, and some of it's really funny. He made a video of Jesus got pulled over by the traffic police, and they were like, "Can I see your license?" And he's like, "Oh, I left it with my father." And then he runs off, but he runs over this lake, and then the cop is like trying to chase him, but falling into the lake because Jesus can run on water. And that went viral on Sora AI. And then that guy's cameo starts to get used. And so he's like a celebrity now, but he went viral essentially for AI slop. He's the king of slop. And it's great. I don't know how he feels about it, and I don't know if he makes any money out of it, but he allowed his face to be cameoed, so everyone cameos him. It's more of a question with people like famous actors like Tom Hanks I think he actually did sue an AI company for using his likeness. But if you think about it, like Arnold Schwarzenegger was perfectly happy to appear in Terminator. salvation as a very young version of himself. He didn't even have to show up, but they scanned him. Now, here's a sort of philosophical question. Sadly, Arnold Schwarzenegger currently has heart problems, right? And he's pretty old. And I love Arnie, and it would be sad that he die and he can't make any more films. But would it be okay to use his AI likeness to put him in new films? If he signs a contract and says, yes, you can do that, then there's nothing to stop Arnie being a superstar for the next 300 years. And that's weird, right? That's a scary thought. Like, how is someone else gonna come in and beat Arnie? Like you'll end up with these idols that literally are immortal. So it's a really interesting concept, but it's kind of scary. It's getting a little philosophical now, but it's a big thing. People are thinking about this.
Yeah, and the ethical side of that is also a very huge part of how people feel about, uh, for example, the example that you used. If an actor were, if a company, if a studio were to use the likeness of an actor who's not living anymore in in future movies way beyond their lifetime, is that still right? I think it still falls back to the person or the audience or the person who is consuming that media. How much do they, how
Yeah.
much are they comfortable with? Do am I okay with this? Am I okay with seeing, consuming this type of media, or will I do anything about it? It's all goes back to how it also shapes up, because public perception might change in the future. As we said, this technology has advanced faster than people have adapted to it. Soon enough, people will catch up, and the general stance on whatever even conversation we're having right now, everything might have changed by then. People might be comfortable with way different things, with way different things than they are right now. And I think it's all a matter of time, especially with something like this, because it's very soon and it's very new. Because ChatGPT hasn't even been around, hasn't even clocked a decade yet. Like you see, it's still
Mm.
very new, to decide on what the ultimate or what the resulting decision will be.
But it's I saw one of your videos where you were showing how AI had advanced, and of course you use the classic the litmus
Will
test of
Smith.
AI video generation. Will Smith eating spaghetti, and I actually really like those early ones where he's kind of crazy. Like
Yeah.
I find them like it's slop, right? But there's something kind of hilarious about them. Like the article you read about the guy in Naples. It's so ugly that it's so bad that it's good almost. And that's why you can't get that again. And that's kind of why I'm glad that I wrote this book of poems using bad bad machine translation, like when I could, because if I tried to do it now, it wouldn't be funny. Like, part of it was the fact that machine can't do it. And that was part of the joke of the Racter book, the Policeman's Beard, the first book written by a computer. It was supposed to be weird and freaky. But ironically, it was heavily edited by humans, so it wasn't actually authentically written by a computer anyway. But like, yeah, who's to say what's good and bad? And people have different tastes, but I think the bottom line is, there's so many ethical pitfalls, and the big companies are doing bad things. That's not new. Big companies have always been screwing us over in one way or another. And also, like artists, photographers take a great picture, but they're in the right place at the right time. Or an AI artist makes something and they have a great prompt and they work on it so that it actually is a good piece of art. But then other people, they don't care whether it's good or not. They just want to be entertained. They just want to flick through it, and it makes them laugh for 5 minutes, and they want the next thing. It's such a big field. I think that like just trying to process all of AI in one go. It's not possible, but it's a really interesting area. But I think one of the interesting things is that I have a lot of friends who are graphic designers, or I have a friend who's actually a lecturer and a painter at a London university. And initially, he was really into AI and he sung its praises and he was experimenting with it a lot. But he's kind of been turned off it again. I think for the same reasons you were, Linny. I think he could see it was making him a little blunt. But then other like and if you use Adobe Photoshop, it's got AI built into it now. Nobody asked. Nobody, no, there was no conversation. It's just there. So anyone who uses Photoshop is using AI. And when you click on something and it draws an outline around it, that's AI as well, you know. And when you send a text message to your parents, say, I'll be home later, and it knows that you mean later and not something else, that predictive text, that's also AI. So it's just that it's all exploded now. So I think that's the bubble. And I think the bubble will kind of just turn to stone and then fall down, and no one will even remember that it was a bubble because it will just become normalized in the same way that photography is normalized, or the same way other new technologies have become part of our everyday life, you know. So it's a scary thing, but it's also really interesting. And I don't want to be left behind, but I don't want to be consumed by it either.
Yeah. You mentioned something very interesting and about the what do you think about the current AI bubble conversation that's happening? How much of it are you aware of
Yeah,
and
that was one of
what do
your
you think?
questions you wanted to ask me, and I didn't know how to answer that, but I just did. I think, yeah, I think it'll just, like a lot of these bubbles, people will lose interest before you
Yeah.
know, and it won't go away, but people just won't care as much. Maybe like COVID, everyone was really careful about COVID for a long time. COVID's still around, it's still affecting loads of people. People are getting really sick still, but no one cares, and it's just normalized. We just learn to live with it.
Yeah. And a very another part of this whole AI conversation that the same article that I mentioned before, he was further showing the double standard nature of that we have. And let me read you a small part that I wrote in my notes. He says that the environmental cost of AI is real and urgent, but we seem to forget that almost all the technology we use relies on similar systems of exploitation and pollution, but we seem to let those ones slide. He uses a very funny example to show it. I once heard that an artist I once heard an artist at a conference justify the use of AI for making art by saying that he used it to criticize the medium and that his generative runs didn't pollute much. Yet, to attend the same conference, he flew across the ocean, releasing more carbon in the atmosphere than his lifetime use on AI. This was the double standard that he was trying to point out that, sure, yes, we recognize that AI is a problem for the environment, but we seem to forget that a lot of other things are a problem for the environment. And that's not to make it look like it's not a bigger issue than it is, but it's also to recognize that the nature of how technology has advanced, it has come with both negatives and positives. The same energy that you're using right now, if it's not coming from a renewable source, it's still polluting the environment. So it's still going back to what you as a consumer are willing to stomach. How much of this entire thing are you willing to let slide? What companies do you support? What to the companies that you use their products? How much of what they do you support? Are you comfortable with to continue supporting them? And that's kind of where the major conversation just leads back to. Everything just goes back to time and what you as a consumer are doing about it in your own capacity. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you as a human being on this planet today, you're constantly faced with these dilemmas. Like you go to the supermarket and you've got the cheap meat, which the animal wasn't having a happy life, with a much more expensive free range meat. And if you can afford it, then definitely buy the free range meat. Or, if you have the ethical power to become a vegan, don't eat any of it, if that's what you really believe. But it's your choice at the end of the day. But we don't even always have the choice. Like you might want to eat the more ethically sourced product, but you need to afford it because it's more expensive. And that's the reason is because it's cheaper to do things the nasty, horrible way. And this is kind of with AI as well. Like those Hollywood companies, they're not going to be hiring CG experts anymore if they can just get a prompt engineer who works at half the price, who can produce something almost as good using prompts to an AI. Or if they can, like supermarkets are getting rid of humans at the checkouts, and you scan the barcode yourself now, and because they've got this sophisticated surveillance and AI in the CCTV that can tell if you've stolen something. So all the staff of the supermarkets are being wiped out, replaced by automations, by AI detectors, and by surveillance and cameras and scanners. It's how the world's going. It's the future. It's not nice. It's scary, but it's so that they can save money at the end of the day. But you're constantly faced with these ethical choices, even when you buy your food from the supermarket. So it's no difference when you look at, when you choose which company to subscribe to for your AI, try and choose one that you don't hate. Like if you think Chat GPT and OpenAI are evil, then you should not be paying them. Don't give them your vote, use another company. But the other companies are probably just as bad or worse. Like DeepSeek's an interesting one because they're said to have like stolen Chat GPT in it. And there was a great meme of Sam Altman going, "They stole all the things we stole." And it's just fantastic. That was exactly the spirit. No one cared that DeepSeek stole from ChatGPT because they already stole everything. It's like it's funny. I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know where I stand on it, but I'm just trying not to be destroyed by it. But it's kind of, you know, it's just life, isn't it? You just have to
yeah.
make your choices and try and choose what's right for you. And let's hope that the good guys win.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for participating in this interview. I know I've taken up more time than I'd informed you about. I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, for those who are watching, because
Lenny,
this
no,
is
you didn't complain when I held up my poetry book or my Shakespeare book. So I was happy. I got what I wanted. I wanted to tell people about that. I don't know if anyone will buy it, but if they do, check out Hungry Wolf Press. Not everything we do there is AI, by the way. Most of it isn't. But
yeah,
we're not. Like this is why I was arguing that not everything made by AI is inherently bad. If it's good, it's good.
yeah,
AI is like a tool. But I was really happy to talk to you, man. It was thank you for reading my blog post. And
yeah,
thanks
yeah.
for being kind to me. In This is like the first time I've ever been interviewed by a YouTuber, so I was a little scared of you. But yeah, you're a nice guy, and I love your channel. I
Thank you, thank you.
subscribed, and I was even enjoying your music earlier on. So
Oh my
yeah, don't let
goodness.
Suno scrape your music off you, man. Keep it real.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, for because this is gonna come out on the second channel is an entire uncut episode. Where can people find you? I know you've mentioned Hungry Wolf Press and the your where you write your articles. Where can people find you if they want more of what you do?
Oh, so Uniliterate is my main blog, Uniliterate, and also hungrywolfpress.net. So uniliterate.com. But yeah, please just search for me. There's two people called Richard Pinner. One of them is a magician who's amazing and funny. That one's not me. I'm not amazing and funny. I'm the other guy. I'm the linguist.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks very much for having me on your channel, Lenny. I hope we can stay in touch and best of luck with everything, mate.
Thank you so much for taking the time to answer the questions, share your opinions and worldviews on this heavy topic. And I hope someone, if anyone made it to the end of this episode, as someone, I hope you learned something from this. And I hope that you're not only just take everything that we say and take them as truth, you'll do your own research, you'll learn about it more on your own, you'll formulate your own thoughts and opinions from it. And stay happy and learn more every day because there's so much to learn. And thank you so much. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you and I hope we stay in touch.
Yeah, you too, Lenny. Thanks. All the best to you.
All the
See you.
best. Bye.